Hello, everyone. Welcome to another study of Oahspe.com podcast video, copyright for YouTube. Today's subject shall be elements, creation, general relativity. Now, starting out on the study of Oahspe.com page, More Science 2, Chemistry, Physics, Astronomy. Oahspe, Book of Cosmology or Cosmogony and Prophecy, Chapter 11, Verse 6. There is no such thing as separating science and religion. To obtain knowledge and to do good, these are valuable. Oahspe, Book of Knowledge, Part 1 or Chapter 1, Verse 30. Te or Tai said, I will reason with thee, Jehovah, for all I know shall be based upon science and truth. From thine own perfection am I inspired to this end, and my talents shall be strengthened by pursuing the exact sciences of all the known truths. Neither will I put away mine own judgment, nor accept for truth that which is at variance with thy established laws. Talents shall be strengthened by pursuing and learning physics, astronomy, mathematics, physical anthropology, neuroscience, and genetics. Definition of exact science. A science, as physics, chemistry, or astronomy, whose laws are capable of accurate quantitative expression. And that is from Exact Science Definition by Merriam-Webster. Oahspe, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 3, Verse 20. They have said there are 5 elements of corpor meaning physical matter, then again 60, and 100. But in time they will say there are millions, and yet all of them are comprehended in the word corpor. To resolve them, discover them, and classify them, and their combinations, is the work of man. Right there you have a periodic table of the elements. And underneath that it says, at the time Oahspe was written in 1881, man had only discovered and classified 64 elements. Gadolinium is the 64th element discovered in 1880. In 1952, as Oahspe correctly predicted, man discovered and classified the 100th element, naming it fermium, 72 years after Oahspe was typed. Oahspe said that there are 5 elements of corpor, or Oahspe said they have said, meaning man. Man have said there are 5 elements of corpor, then again 60 and 100. And to resolve them, discover them, and classify them and their combinations is the work of man. Creation of elements. International scientists race to create the heaviest element in the universe. 2 international teams are competing to create the heaviest element in the universe. Super heavy elements are the elements at the bottom of the periodic table with an atomic number, the number of protons, above 104. So if we look at the elements, the periodic table of elements there at the bottom, we see the heaviest elements. The previous heaviest element, temporarily called Ununactium, was discovered in 2002. And the two teams are now attempting to produce elements 119 and 120. The basic principle of creating super heavy atoms is simple. Smash the atoms of one element into those of another, and their protons will add up to create a new element. I'll repeat that again. The basic principle of creating super heavy atoms is simple. Smash the atoms of one element into those of another, and their protons will add up to create a new element. Titanium's 22 protons will join berkelium's 97 to create an atom with 119 protons. One atom of element 119. So let's see there. If you add 22 protons to 97, you get 119. And you create an atom with 119 protons of element 119. So I'm going to click on the link and it says there, international scientists race to create the heaviest element in the universe, November 18, 2011. And there you can read the information I just read. And returning. Oahspe on elements of Corpor, creation, aggregate. Oahspe, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 3, Verse 20. They have said there are 5 elements of Corpor, then again 60 and 100, and yet all of them are comprehended in the word Corpor. Where they are aggregated together, the result is called a creation. I'll repeat that again. Verse 20 of Oahspe, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 3. They have said there are 5 elements of Corpor, then again 60 and 100, and yet all of them are comprehended in the word Corpor. Where they are aggregated together, the result is called a creation. What is creation more than to make a drop of rain? In brackets I put, or to make a new chemical element. From Merriam-Webster.com/dictionary/aggregate. Aggregate, formed by adding together 2 or more elements. Definition of aggregate: formed by the collection of units or particles into a body, mass, or amount. Collective, as a one clustered in a dense mass. Compression of the etheric solution, which contains infinitesimal subatomic particles, needles, or strings, by the vortexian spiral force creates matter, mass, density, protons, atoms, and elements. Aggregate equals creation equals 2 plus 2 creates 4. That's the mathematics of creation. Titanium's 22 protons will join berkelium's 97 to create an atom with 119 protons. One atom of element 119 equals aggregate equals creation. 1952 is the first year man created a new element that is not found in nature, even in trace amounts. That was elements number 99 and 100, which Oahspe predicted man would discover, element 100. And Oahspe defined how they would be created. Aggregated together is what Oahspe said. Aggregated together. Elements of Corpor. 100. Element 100, fermium. Fermium is a synthetic element with symbol Fm and atomic number 100, formed by the absorption of 6 neutrons by a uranium-238 nucleus. In brackets I put aggregate, creation, new element. And that definition was from wikipedia.org/wiki/fermium. Oahspe correctly predicted element 100, or that man would discover and say that there are 100 elements, when there had only been 64 elements at the time Oahspe was typed. So there were many more elements to be discovered and classified by man. But that came true. And Oahspe correctly predicted element 100, or 100 elements, by man, and predicted how it would be created by aggregation. 6 neutrons by a uranium-238 nucleus, 71 years before it occurred in 1952. And element 99 was Einsteinium, ES, named after the theoretical physicist Albert Einstein in 1952. 100, element 100, fermium, FM, named after Enrico Fermi, the physicist who produced the first controlled chain reaction in 1952. Or at least the element was discovered. Fermium was discovered and named in 1952. Enrico Fermi produced the first controlled chain reaction, I believe, in 1938. And of course, Albert Einstein lived before 1952, and that was the year that element 99, Einsteinium, was named after him. Now, Oahspe, Book of Knowledge, chapter 4, verse 26. This then is the genesis of the cycles, i.e., first Jehovah and his times, and all created things from without a beginning. I'll repeat that again. First Jehovah and his times, and all created things from without a beginning. And Jehovah was the unseen, which is spirit, and the seen, which is his person and body. Verse 27. By being in mastery over his person or body, Jehovah created countless worlds, of which the corporal earth is one. And below that I wrote, the above states that the Creator created from his person or body, everything being a part of him. He did not create from nothing. Otherwise, you say he is nothing. Because there are a lot of people who say creation is creating something from nothing. Even there are even faithists I've talked to that believe this, that falsely believe this, even though Oahspe says otherwise, as I just read to you. This shows a failure not only to understand what a creation is, but to understand and be aware of what Oahspe is saying or teaching. Creation is the moving of parts and putting parts together with other parts, an aggregate. And that's something that a vortex does. That's why vortex or vortex motion is the will or the creative force of Jehovah in action, in motion. That's why Jehovah uses a vortex to create matter, planets, stars, galaxies, because the circular motion of a vortex moves parts and puts parts together. Jehovah, being one with and master over the parts of his person, can move them around at will. The all motion is his speech, it says in Oahspe, and create by aggregation, not by something from nothing. There is no such thing as something from nothing. In Oahspe it says, first Jehovah and his times, and all created things from without a beginning. So here Oahspe clearly states the created parts had no beginning without a beginning. I'll repeat again what Oahspe says. First Jehovah in his times, and all created things from without a beginning. So here Oahspe clearly states the created parts had no beginning without a beginning. Oahspe, Book of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 1 says, all was, all is, all ever shall be. And below that I wrote, subatomic etheric particles, needles, have always existed. Oahspe, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 3, verse 20. They have said there are 5 elements of corpor. I've read this before, but I'll read it again because it's in context with whatever I'm getting ready to talk about. They have said there are 5 elements of corpor, and then again 60 and 100. And yet all of them are comprehended in the word corpor. Where they are aggregated together, the result is called a creation. Definition of aggregate: formed by the collection of units or particles into a body, mass, or amount. Collective, as one clustered in a dense mass. Creation equals the subatomic needles clustered together in a dense mass. And what brings those subatomic needles clustered together? Vortex motion and the will of Jehovah. Oahspe, Book of Discipline, chapter, 14, XIV, chapter 14, verse 21. Jehovah, creator, ruler, and dispenser, worlds without end. Amen. Oahspe, Book of Aranathan, chapter 1, verse 21. And he is forever bringing together, creating, and forever dissolving and dissipating worlds without number. Verse 22, illimitable in soul and spirit. Illimitable, meaning not limited. Illimitable in soul and spirit, forever quickening into life from his own parts. I'll repeat that again. Forever quickening into life from his own parts. That's Jehovah. Without loss or waste or lack of space, and without hindrance. And in the Oahspe Standard Edition, it says in a note to that, being too many to count, meaning illimitable, without limit, and limitless, immeasurable, inexhaustible, infinite, uncircumscribable. Oahspe Book of Fragapati, son of Jehovah, chapter, let's see, what is that? That's 24, XXIV, chapter 24, verse 16. To learn to create. First of all, you need to know what a creation is to learn it. And if you think to create means something from nothing, you got something to learn. To learn to create, to invent, to cast one's spirit forth with power, to congregate and make, is to go on the right road. So, scrolling down. So, I hope people are able to understand what a creation is according to Oahspe. Now, scrolling, let's see, right here. This came from wikipedia.org, General Relativity. In 1907, beginning with a simple thought experiment involving an observer in free fall, he embarked on what would be an 8-year search for a relativistic theory of gravity. He meaning Albert Einstein. After numerous detours and false starts, his work culminated in the presentation to the Prussian Academy of Science in November 1915 of what are now known as the Einstein field equations. These equations specify how the geometry of space and time is influenced by whatever matter is present, and form the core of Einstein's general theory of relativity. General relativity predicts that the path of light is bent, or in my own words, curved, in a gravitational field. Light passing a massive body is deflected towards the body. The effect has been confirmed by observing the light of stars or distant quasars being deflected as it passes the sun. Instead of using the word deflected, you can say pushed toward that body, pushed toward the sun. The vortexian force or power pushes the light. Or some could say pulled, but I would say a push force from without toward the interior would be a push. Pull would come from the interior toward itself, but it's pushing from the out. The force of the vortex is from the external toward the internal. That's the positive force, and that is what gravity is a manifestation of. And that came from, or the next part of what I will read comes from pbs.org, Nova Physics Conversation with Brian Greene. And Brian Greene is a physicist. The real reason why general relativity is widely accepted is because it made predictions that were borne out by experimental observations. The primary one that put general relativity on the map was its prediction of the bending of starlight by the sun, which in 1919 was confirmed by the observation during a solar eclipse. That was the moment when general relativity emerged from the realm of theory and entered the realm of being a piece of reality as we know it. From physicist author Brian Greene, June 13, 2003, interview to Nova. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, Chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. It is an error to say that the eye sees the sun by means of a straight line. The line of sight to the sun is spiral and oval. Allowance must be made for the vortexian spirality. So basically, it's saying here in Oahspe that light will be not straight to the sun, but spiral and oval, or curved is another word. Curvature of space-time in the Einsteinian language. Oahspe described that the path of light is not a straight line, but bent, spiral, or curved, as I would say, in a gravitational vortexian field in 1881. 34 years before, the brilliant scientist Albert Einstein presented this theory in 1915, and 38 years before, this was confirmed by observation during a solar eclipse in 1919. It is reported that Einstein had a copy of Oahspe. Einstein is often regarded as the greatest scientist of the 20th century. Whether that's true or not, that is an opinion out there about Einstein. 8 years before Einstein died in 1955, Gravity Research Foundation. The cosmogony of Oahspe was sent to and read by Albert Einstein in 1947. According to Walter Billa, or Bia, however that's pronounced, Walter Billa or Bia of Death Valley, California, in 1965. Einstein's comment was, "The author has written the absolute truth." And I originally found that on this website right here, gravityresearch.org/pdf//1965/Billa or Bia.pdf. But when I clicked on it today or years later, it says it right there. It was a Gravity Research Foundation link, but it says we couldn't find the page you were looking for. This is either because there is an error in the URL entered into your web browser, or the page you were looking for has been moved or deleted. And it is the second one, because that's where I got the information from, and that's where I provided the link. And originally that link was good, but that page had been moved or deleted. And I wonder why. And right below that, I wrote, on March 19th, 2016, the above information could be found on the Gravity Research Foundation website. And the reason I know, because I went back on the Internet Archive and on my website and found when I first put that link up there, or when they had archived, when it was archived, that I first put that link up there, and that was the earliest date that I could find archived in the Internet Archive. Was March 19, 2016. So it was working at that time, that link. Later, the above website was taken down. I wonder why. On 10/2/20, in other words, on October 2nd, 2020, I sent an email to George Rideout of Gravity Research Foundation. And his name was associated with contacts. If you wanted to contact somebody from the Gravity Research Foundation, his name was there, and his email address was there. And I emailed him asking him why that web page was taken down. No answer yet. I've received no answer from him yet. But I'll keep this information up on my website just to show people that this did authenticate what I had heard others say, that Einstein had a copy of Oahspe and that Einstein had read Oahspe at one time. Whether or not that he read it before he came up with the theory of general relativity, I don't know. In regards to the person who claimed and was recorded and documented on the Gravity Research Foundation, saying that the cosmogony of Oahspe was sent to and read by Albert Einstein in 1947. A Walter Billa or Bia of Death Valley, California. I looked for that person, any records of that person, and what I found was, says here, all California death index 1940 to 1997 results for Billa or Bia. Walter Billa, death date 1968, death place San Diego. And there was a link for that on ancestry.com. And I'll click on that link, and right there you see right there. And scrolling down, there it is right there, the record of Walter Billa. So in 1968, presumably died in 1968. So that would have been 21 years late after supposedly that a copy of the Book of Cosmogony was sent to Albert Einstein, and he read it and claimed that the author of that book, being John Ballou Newborough, and the angels who he said communicated it to him, was absolutely right, according to Walter Billa, is what Einstein said. So Walter Billa would have died in San Diego, California, which is interesting because that's where I spent my childhood, and that's also where a librarian in San Diego asked a friend of my mother when she went to go check out that book, said, "Why do you want that book? Only scientists check out that book." And Walter Billa was associated with the gravity research, was mentioned in the gravity research webpage, which awards scientific work dealing with gravity. So at one time there was a website that had what Walter Billa claimed about Oahspe and Albert Einstein, but later that was taken down. But it was up there for a while. Again, I wonder why it was taken down. Now, right here, there's a picture. This illustration deals with Einstein's general relativity, showing in the center mass, space-time, and light being bent or curved as it approaches that mass. And right there, there's another image. And I'll enlarge it. Another image. Right there showing a massive object curves the space-time around it. Far from the object, space-time is nearly flat. Close to the object, the curvature forms a whale. And in Einstein's picture of gravity, other objects sense the curvature and are drawn into the whale. This is according to Einstein's general relativity, but Oahspe explains it in terms of a vortexian force that produces these effects. It's not the massive object. The mass of the object is determined by the vortexian currents. So the mass of the object is the result or the creation of the vortex. And the so-called gravity is a manifestation of the positive force of the vortex pushing from without toward the center. So, in a sense, they have it backwards. And right here, in this image, you have C, E, and U. C equals circular orbit, E equals elliptical orbit, U equals unbound orbit. So right there, C, you have the circular orbit right there. E is the elliptical orbit right there, and U is the unbound orbit. And right there, there's an image of an object coming, curving, and falling into the center of that space-time field as described by Einstein's general relativity. But in the Oahspe description, that's just that object just follows the vortexian currents as it is pushed further toward the center with each spiral. And that is the vortexian current. It spirals, and with each spiral, it gets closer toward the center. So it's actually following the vortexian current and not the warping of space-time. And right there, there's an actual vortex, a fluid vortex in water. And you see how it has the very similar or same shape as this Einsteinian curvature of space-time, gravitational curvature of space-time. And right below that, I wrote, a vortex causes matter to rotate, which produces circular cycles. And let me, yeah, okay. Explain much, if not most, of what happens in the universe. That's from page 1 of the Universal Cycle Theory, published 2011 by Stephen J. Puentz and Glenn Borchardt, PhD in geology and geophysics. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, matter bends the fabric of space-time. The distortion of the space-time continuum even affects the behavior of light. Einstein was wrong. I know people aren't used to hearing that, but yes, according to me and according to Oahspe, Einstein was wrong. It's not matter that causes those effects. It is the vortexia, the etheric solution in axial and orbitic rotary motion. In brackets, I put the axial motion is a fractal of the orbitic motion. See miscellaneous chapter page of this website, halfway down from top. The gravitational lens effect is created by the vortex external to the planet or star, not by the planet or star. Wrong, and here's what Oahspe says about wrong conclusions from correct mathematics. Oahspe Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 3, verse 17. A man may prophesy by a traveling wagon what time it will reach town, but the correctness of his prophecy does not prove that the wagon pushed the horse to town. Although Einstein was wrong about the cause of the gravitational lensing effect, or the gravitational effects, his equations and calculations work because, as Oahspe said, it is a trifling difference whether a man prophesy, in brackets I put calculate, by a vortex or by a planet. Oahspe Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 3, verse 18. Planetary disturbances are not caused by any power or effect of one planet on another. The cause of the disturbances lieth in the vortices wherein they float. Mortals, meaning human beings on a physical planet with a physical body, cannot see the vortices. Their only means of prophesying lieth in corpor. Also, I'd just like to point out here the use of the word prophesying or prophecy is related to mathematics in these verses or in this verse, because prophesy here means to calculate. So this is also related to the Arachna Buagla prophecy tablet, how you can use mathematics or calculations to prophesy. Now back to where I was reading. A man may prophesy of the moon by calculations of the disturbances of the tides. But to attribute to the tides the cause of the moon's position would be no more erroneous than to attribute the cause of tides to the moon. Verse 19. It is not the intention in these revelations to give new calculations in regard to occurrences on the planets. It is a trifling difference whether a man prophesy by a vortex or by a planet. In Einstein's case, he prophesies or calculates by the planet, the mass of the planet, for his gravitational field equations that actually work. Because, as Oahspe says, it is a trifling difference whether a man prophesy or calculate by a vortex or by a planet. Wherein he erreth in regard to judging the cause of things, he should be put on the right road. Wherein he hath had no knowledge of the forces and currents of the unseen worlds, which in this case means the vortexian currents and force, the unseen force, wherein he hath no knowledge of the forces and currents of the unseen worlds and their dominion over the seen worlds. Revelation can reach him. And in this case, what was revealed in Oahspe in 1881 to mankind. Now scrolling down. Now to the web page on studyofOSP.com called Subatomic Particles, String Theory, Quantum, and GUT, Grand Unified Theory, or Grand Unified Theorem. So here we go. It says right here, above image from theoretical physicist Matt Strassler. And in this image it shows, I'll enlarge it. Well, I won't enlarge that because it'll be taking it to another web page, and I want to stay here. But it says superstring theory in its simplest form, a theory of many fields and their particles. And there are links that you can click on and read further information on that. But below that, I wrote above needle-shaped particles of string theory, originating in 1970, 89 years after Oahspe. 1970, string theory is born. Three particle physicists independently realize that the dual theories developed in 1968 to describe the particle spectrum also describe the quantum mechanics of oscillating strings. This marks the official birth of string theory. Now, this string theory is similar to what Oahspe calls needles, which all corpor or matter in its smallest state is in the form of strings or needles. String theory particles, 20 seconds into video below. I'm going to click on that. This YouTube video right here. The name of this video is Quantum Physics and Consciousness.
But there's another theory. My conscious mind could be controlling this subatomic world. And the sixth sense could be what makes the universe tick. Michio Kaku is a theoretical physicist. As a pioneer of string theory, which proposes the world is actually nine-dimensional.
Okay. I stopped it right there, and it shows the strings, or the, as you can see, needle-shaped subatomic particles. Now back to studyofoahspe.com. Page 1 of the Universal Cycle Theory, Neo-Mechanics of Hierarchically Infinite Universe. 2011 by Stephen J. Puntz and Glenn Borchardt, PhD, says, infinity is crucial because it explains the extent and structure of the universe. Based on logic and observation, we assume that matter is infinitely divisible in the microscopic direction and infinitely integrable in the macroscopic direction. So keep in mind what that book said, infinitely divisible in the microscopic direction. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, Chapter 1, verse 35. Light is polarity of corporal needles in solution, caused by the lines of vortexia. In experiments on Earth, the flash requireth a certain time to polarize these infinitesimal needles. That correlates with matter is infinitely divisible in the microscopic direction. Infinitesimal needles, and for convenience sake, such lapse of time is called the travel of light. When the flash continueth, as in the case of the Sun Center, the master's infinitesimal needles remain poised from the Sun Center outward, even to the earth. Hebrews 11, verse 3 of the Bible. By faith, we understand that the universe was created by God's command, so that what is seen has been made from things that are not visible. And they're not visible because they are of such infinitesimal size. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, Chapter 4, verse 5. As previously stated, corpor, or physical matter being in solution in eth. That means it's broken down so small that we can't see it, like when you throw the salt or the sugar into water and it dissolves in solution to where you don't see the salt or sugar no more. As previously stated, it corpora being in solution in eth hath in the main the shape of needles, what scientists call string theory, but of such infinitesimal size that corporal knowledge of them can only be at most subjective knowledge. Now in green, I highlighted subjective knowledge. This correlates what was in the Bible where it says by faith we understand how the universe was created, that the universe was created by God's command so that what is seen has been made from things that are not seen. Subjective knowledge by faith, meaning you can't see it, but you can understand it subjectively. Subjective knowledge. The infinitesimal size here in yellow, in the corporal knowledge in yellow, correlates with the universe was created, that what is seen has been made from things that are not visible. Infinitesimal size. Now, when you Google infinitesimal under mathematics, it says noun, infinitesimal, plural, noun, infinitesimals. Number one, an indefinitely small quantity, a value approaching zero. In brackets, I put 0 point energy, also called quantum vacuum 0 point energy. And right here in something called, in mathematics called the Cantor set, you start out with a length of 1, and we removed 1 unit. So how many points are left? 1 minus 1 equals 0. Are there 0 points left? Are you sure? Since the middle third of each remaining segment is removed, the endpoints of each segment remain. There are an infinite number of little segments remaining. So are there an indefinite number of points remaining? No. I.e., Cantor set is of 0 measure. Anyway, below that I put remove the open middle third of it, i.e. get 1/3, 2/3. Now remove the middle thirds of each of the remaining intervals, i.e. get 1/9, 2/9, and 7/9, 8/9. Continue this process ad infinitum. The points left over form a fractal called the standard Cantor set. Above fractal mathematical Cantor set line segments, needles equals infinity equals infinitely small. As you keep removing a third of the line, it gets smaller and smaller, as illustrated here. And they resemble needle shapes, these lines, or strings. And they approach 0, but they'll get at some point too small for us to see. And we will have no no objective knowledge of them. We can only come to know about it through understanding or faith, because we can't see it, but we can still know that it exists. And that's what true faith is, not blind faith, but faith based on science and logic. Now, page 11 of the Universal Cycle Theory says aether refers to all forms, aether or ether, refers to all forms of matter too small to be easily detected by humans. Means too small to be seen. A subdivision of baryonic matter. We label matter smaller than an electron, undetectable matter, as aether. And in green, I highlighted in green undetectable matter and aether or ether. And that correlates with what I put in green before, where it says in the Bible, by faith we understand that that which is seen was made from things that are not visible. Subjective knowledge, as it says in Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy. I highlighted in green because it's undetectable matter. That's what ether is. And underneath that, baryonic matter, matter the size of electrons and larger, that equals corpor of Oahspe. Ethereal matter means matter smaller than electrons, etheric corporal needles of Oahspe in an etheric solution. Now, keeping that definition in mind, that matter the size of electrons and larger is baryonic matter, and ethereal matter is matter smaller than electrons, let's go back to a previous video that I did a previous video that I did about trapped particles in the magnetosphere, which is the vortex of the Earth. Now back to studyofoasp.com home page and scrolling down. Right there. Science and earthbound spirits. Just as the magnetosphere contains populations of charged particles that are trapped in the Earth's magnetic field, so does the vortex of the Earth contain populations of atmospheric spirits trapped in the lower heavens. Just as charged particles are trapped in the Earth's magnetosphere, so are earthbound spirits trapped in the Earth's vortex. And right here in this illustration, this scientific illustration, it shows two regions of charged particles trapped in magnetosphere. Protons trapped in inner radiation belts right there, and electrons trapped in outer radiation belts. And atmospherians reside in the lower heavens and are called bound spirits because they are bound to atmosphere till they are emancipated. And that's from ospstandardedition.com. And that's where I wrote that physical or corporal man is composed of atoms and molecules, and that's a scientific fact. The spirits of the dead are composed of subatomic matter. Lower atmospherian spirits are composed of matter comparable in mass to protons and neutrons. Higher atmospherian spirits are composed of matter comparable in mass to electrons. Etherians are composed of matter comparable in mass smaller than an electron and free from the power of the magnetosphere vortex. Remember that ethereal matter is smaller than an electron, which is non-baryonic matter in science. And in science, the baryonic matter is the size of an electron or larger. And this has to do with what man is physical or corporal man is composed of atoms and molecules, and the atmospherian spirits are composed of mass that is comparable to protons and neutrons and electrons. So that's the physics of the spiritual realms of the higher and lower heavens. Now going back to the page where we were before. baryonic matter, ethereal matter, neutrons, protons, and electrons. Then are these made of some form of still smaller Legos, building blocks? I put in brackets. The way to tackle this question experimentally, collide these smallest known building blocks together really hard and check if they break apart. This procedure has been tried with ever larger particle colliders, but electrons still show no sign of being made of anything smaller despite having been smashed at 99.9999999% of the speed of light at the CERN laboratory outside Geneva. And that's from page 161 of Mathematical Universe 2014 by Max Tegmark, physicist professor at MIT. Now, Oahspe Book of Thor, son of Jehovah, chapter 4, verse 13. Jehovah said, as the earth is to the air and the ether above, so is an atom of copper to the etheric solution. But we can get an estimate of the number of atoms in the earth by first knowing what its mass is. The mass of an object is a measure of how much material the object has. The mass of the earth is this big digit, which I won't even attempt to say. The bottom line is that there are about that many atoms in the world. If you want to write it with all the zeros, it would be this number right here, which equals X times larger the earth is to an atom of copper. And that came from this website right here. See if that link is still good. Yeah, right there. JLab, Science Education website. So going back, etheric needles of copper are that many times smaller than an atom. Just going by that verse in Oahspe, Book of Thor, son of Jehovah, chapter 4, verse 13. Jehovah said, as the earth is to the air and the ether above, so is an atom of copper to the etheric solution. So that large number right there represents how many atoms there are on the earth. So that would be how many times larger the earth is to an atom, or that represents how much larger an atom of copper is to the etheric solution. So is an atom of copper to the etheric solution, yeah. This gives you an idea of how infinitesimal etheric needles of copper are. Infinity on the microscopic scale. 183,600 times larger a hydrogen atom is to an electron. And this large number times larger an atom is to an etheric needle of copper. And you can do the math there and divide by that number, and that equals how many times larger an electron. The number is 724 dual, let's see, what is that? 724 duodecillion times smaller than an electron, or some etheric needles of copper. And I got links to those very large microscopic numbers. Page 13 of the Universal Cycle Theory says, field, redefined as a circulation of matter. Rather than being matterless, think of a field, like a magnetic field, gravitational field, and so on and so forth, as a circulation of etheric particles. Circulation. And what is a vortex motion? In a circle. And the circle is the symbol of the creator. When a vortex forms, aether particles circulate around the center of the vortex. The circulating aether causes an effect described as a field. Field equals electromagnetic, gravitational, quantum, etc. Electromagnetic field, gravitational field, quantum field, etc. So this is the physics, the science, the vortexian science of electromagnetism, gravitation, and quantum. So that is it for this subject of study of Oahspe.com. Thank you for tuning in and listening, and stay tuned for the next study of Oahspe.com podcast video.